Hello, my name is Mike. I'm a yoga teacher, and today we're going to do some meditation posture and some movement on the chair, and then we'll transition to the yoga mat and do some seated meditation there as well. We can focus on some gentle movements while seated in the chair, something you can do even while you're at the desk. Maybe you don't have the ability to get up and do a whole physical yoga practice. You can get some movement into the joints. Now, one way we can bring awareness into the joints, bring awareness into the body, is with the breath and the posture. Take, for example, I'm sitting here at the desk. Maybe I'm always on the computer, or reading something down here. Always reading like that, or working at the desk, it's easy to get this type of, more rounded posture. Of course, with the, putting some of the weight on the forearms here could be helpful to prevent it from going into the low back and up into the spine. However, staying in those positions for long periods of time can lead to some discomfort and possibly, even over the course of a long time, may be bad for other things. For example, our muscles are tightened, we're not breathing as much, and with less movement in the joints, there could be less proprioception awareness, and even some deterioration might be possible. That's with less movement in general and the wear and tear. That's just a very generalized statement, but if we're always in the habit of doing this for decades, that's not going to have as good a result as if we were to move around a bit. So let's explore some ways that we can move while seated. The first thing we can do is become aware of the posture. Right now, my feet are both planted flat on the ground, and if you're seated, you can possibly notice if your feet are kind of comfortable against the ground. It doesn't have to be firmly planted, but in this case, if we're working on posture, we can start with our feet flat onto the ground and our knees kind of above our ankles. Then we might want our hips in line with the knees, or maybe even slightly higher, but generally in the same line as the knees, and the knees are above the ankles. And now we can pay attention to the lower back. The hips, the sit bones are sitting down, and paying attention where that lower back is. Maybe bracing the core in a little bit, and that gives some stability in the low back. Relaxing the shoulders, but noticing that we're sitting more upright in this case. With the length of the back, the spine elongating up towards the sky. And tucking the chin in slightly as we're raising the top of the head up to the sky. Our hands can rest on the thighs or near the knees. We'll spend a few minutes here, about 5 minutes, closing the eyes and noticing the breath as we're in this more aware posture. Breathing down through the diaphragm and up and into the nostrils. coming out of that meditation with some awareness in the environment. You may have noticed during the experience that the mind wanders a bit. And one way to return that attention into the moment or the meditation is to bring awareness to the posture and the breath. So we can focus in again on that point of focus or even on the breathing. And another thing is to bring more awareness to the posture. Like if I start anterior head leaning a little bit, just tuck the chin in slightly, raise, open up the chest. I'm kind of a more relaxed meditative posture here actually, because my hips are against the back of this chair, which is kind of a sturdy office-seated chair. It's not like a comfy chair that I can just disengage my muscles and relax into. But I kind of have to have some kind of a posture, but it's more of like a lumbar support posture. So in this case, it was still some engagement in the core and elongation of the spine. But the other option would be to sit towards the front half of the chair, and then you would really be engaging a little more. So we could work on some movements while we're in this chair. And let me just make sure that I'm visible the way this camera is positioned. We'll go like that. Step back a bit. So find yourself seated in the chair. Let's do some overhead stretch. Taking an inhale and raising both arms overhead. A little restricted now because I've got shirt stays on, the things that connect your shirt to your socks. That way your shirt doesn't get untucked. So I'm not going to go tearing my shirts or anything. But just opening up and feeling the breath engaging and filling, exhaling, lowering down. Let's raise up and over one arm and exhaling and breathing through to the other side. A few breaths here. Exhaling that arm down, inhaling, raising the opposite arm up and over. You might notice it tracks a little differently as it goes up. Then reaching. And lowering that side. We'll do some twists here, placing one hand on the opposite knee, and then gently stabilizing with the rear hand and twisting towards that side. Deep inhale and exhaling, twisting from the lower torso up into the chest. Knees are close to parallel with each other, feet pointing forward. I definitely feel my right hip a little forward here. Let's release and put the other hand on the opposite knee, outside, and stabilizing with the back and twisting to the right. Inhaling and elongating up through the spine, exhaling, twisting. releasing. Do some forward fold while seated in the chair. We can come up to the front half again. And noticing our core bracing a little bit, so that our core is slightly tucked, but we have a open upper torso, upper chest. And then extending both legs so that the heels are on the ground like this. Toes pointing up to the sky. And the knees don't have to be perfectly straight because we're trying to stay seated on the chair a little bit instead of sliding off. But let's exhale, fold forward, our heart towards the feet. Noticing any release in the low back. The abdomen expanding on the thighs with each inhale and exhale. Returning to that feet flat on the ground, we'll extend one leg now with that heel into the ground, toes pointing to the sky, and exhaling, folding forward with the one extended leg, stretching the back of the leg. Inhale, raising up, putting both feet flat again, and extending the opposite leg, folding forward, chest towards the foot. Feeling the release, the stretch sensation. I have my hands stabilized either above or below the knee here. Raising up. And we can also just do another overhead stretch. Inhaling, raising the arms overhead. A little restricted with the shirt on. Maybe a slight back bend. And exhale, slowly lowering the arms, feeling the sensation through the shoulders. Taking a few rounded breaths here and releasing. Now to also work on the neck a little bit. Just some movement, allowing the chin to tuck in slightly and drop down to the chest, and rolling one ear towards the same side shoulder. Slow release around the neck muscles. With each inhale and exhale, releasing slowly. We'll move to the other side when we're ready. Pressing the opposite shoulder down and away from the ear a little bit, just to feel the stretch. Definitely feel that into my left hand because I've been still recovering from some issue here, but it's resolving. We could even work on stretching the hands a bit, placing the wrists, palms together, moving the wrist around, extending the fingers, gently pressing into them, and maybe even clasping the hands and moving the wrists around gently, pressing the hands, the palms away. Taking a few breaths here. The elbows, the wrists. Always focusing on opening up the chest a little bit. Opening up just a bit more, bracing the core so that upper body is opening and the lower body is kind of bracing a little bit. It's a little opposite of what I'm personally normally in the posture is this lordotic curve and a hunched upper back. And it may be different for every body type, but it's pretty common. So opening the chest and bracing the core, tucking the core in a little bit. Just to bring awareness and allow the breath to move through there. Now we'll actually, we can take our shoes off if you have shoes on, and we can move towards the mats. By now your breath has probably become more deep, perhaps more slow. And let's whip out the yoga mat here. Let me just change the camera so that it's visible. Right. Noticing your movements if you're getting up and walking around a bit before we move to a seated posture. Noticing the ease of movement a little bit more in the joints. Maybe breathing, feeling more relaxed. It makes a difference, even if you're seated in the chair for a long period of time. Just doing those simple stretches and breathing with awareness in the posture, it actually makes you feel more relaxed. Let me see if I can find a book here that would have some good things to read from. How about, let's see. Something. Okay, how about A Course in Miracles? Have not read this entire book yet, obviously. It's pretty big. Okay, right up to here apparently, or somewhere around here. Or maybe, yeah, looks like that's right. That's the way this part. I didn't read up to that. But this is A Course in Miracles, by the Foundation for Inner Peace. I actually don't know who the actual author was, but it was kind of like transmitted through the people who published the book. And here it is. It's been used for insight into a mystical type experience. But like I said, I have not read it entirely, so let me just flip to page, The Meaning of Miracles, Chapter 1. Principles of Miracles. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. One is not harder or bigger than another. They are all the same. All expressions of love are maximal. Miracles, as such, do not matter. The only thing that matters is their source, which is far beyond evaluation. Miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. The real miracle is the love that inspires them. In this sense, everything that comes from love is a miracle. Okay, so a little bit of logical thinking and reasoning to get into that mystical thought process experience. So we can spend a few moments here and meditate. That's just for enjoyment. Got this meditation bench here. It's like a Zen bench. And it's another way to find posture and bring awareness focusing on the breathing. Coming to a seated posture, or even lying down if you prefer. And noticing any difference in the way we're sitting. Sit bones, for instance, here if you're on a pillow or on a meditation bench, you might be angled differently with an anterior pelvic tilt. And allowing the upper body to open up more. The shoulders relaxed down away from the ears, and the top of the head reaching up. Palms can rest on the thighs, or even come into that cosmic mudra. We'll take about 10 minutes here, and notice again bringing more mindfulness back towards the breath, or even in the posture. into the presence of the room, or where you are. Some awareness again, and movements in the body. So you can do the same stretches, the neck away from the opposite shoulder, chin tucked down towards the chest. Opening the chest and expanding, breathing deeply. And let's, if you want to remain seated or lying down, it's fine, or getting up and walking around a little bit. Noticing any difference again. You want to maybe get the blood moving in the joints, the knees, the legs, after being seated for a while. In Zen meditation, there's something called Kinhin, which is the walking meditation, usually in between rounds of sitting meditation. And it's like a slow heel to forefoot walk, being aware, a meditation walk basically. In the yoga practice, being aware of balance, proprioception, this meditation type walking, it's one way that we can be aware of this. We'll read a few more lines from the A Course in Miracles book. Chapter 1, verses 4 to 6. I guess that we call it verses. They got numbers next to the sentences. All miracles mean life, and God is the giver of life. His voice will direct you very specifically. You'll be told all you need to know. Miracles are habits and should be involuntary. They should not be under conscious control. Consciously selected miracles can be misguided. Miracles are natural. When they do not occur, something has gone wrong. Just some more intellectual / dogmatic even / introduction to maybe a mystical experience. Obviously, the wording there is very, kind of archaic. That's the way it was written by the author. Just something to reflect on. So, finding ourselves on the mat, we can actually move into some knee and hip movements as well as wrists. So, coming onto our knees, we can move in slight hip circles, feeling some movement around the hip muscles, into the lower back, moving to the other direction. And sitting back towards the heels, not coming into the hands and knees. Tucking the toes back and pedaling the feet a little bit. Returning down to the hands and knees. Taking our wrists and placing them in different directions on the ground. We can place them flat, like back of the hands against the ground. And moving from side to side, gently moving through the hips. Or we can place your hands flat like this, moving around. Just experiment with different ways that you can place your hands. Place them out like this, place them in like this, place them like this. but make sure there's comfort and not too much strain on the tendons connecting all the bones, the ligaments rather. So rolling the wrists out, the fingers rolling out, moving around with some weight on the wrists. Palms, fingers spread wide, feeling a stretch among the muscles leading into the fingers and thumbs. Maybe placing the back of the hand against the ground. Not putting as much pressure on this case, but just moving gently back and forth all around. And we can also return to that kneeling posture. And maybe doing arms raised up to the sky and taking a few breaths. Maybe a slight back bend. Stretching and reaching and placing the arms down the sides. If it's accessible, coming into a child's pose. Reaching the arms forward and the forehead down towards the ground. If you're kind of restricted, like with my clothes on, I'm going to keep my forearms close to my body here and my forehead towards the ground. An option is you can stack your fists and rest your head on your fists, like this. Just taking a few calming, deep breaths here. Noticing that the breath is becoming longer and more deep with each rounded breath. Returning to a seated posture, just gently and slowly coming up. Another deep breath and exhaling. And again, if you want to walk around a bit, we can get up and noticing movement in the joints, slowly being aware of where our feet are placed into the ground. Our breath, raising the core a little bit and feeling that the upper body open up a bit. A few more breaths here. Feel free to keep moving or finding a resting posture. We'll do one more round of meditation. But first, I'll read another few lines from the A Course in Miracles book for good measure. We'll see where it goes here. remember, this isn't scripture. This is just a some kind of modern interpretation of whatever was transmitted. So here we go. Miracles are everyone's right, but purification is necessary first. Miracles are healing because they supply a lack. They are performed by those who temporarily have more, for those who temporarily have less. Miracles are a kind of exchange, like all expressions of love, which are always miraculous in the true sense. The exchange reverses the physical laws. They bring more love both to the giver and the receiver. And now I'm remembering a little bit about this book, how it's kind of paradoxical, because it talks about things in this world that we perceive, for instance, myself and the other person, and how one is giving or receiving type of thing in this case. And of course it even talks about both being more filled with mercy or grace or love in this case. But it's kind of paradoxical because it plays with the mental interpretation of the world and our experiences, and it almost tricks us into getting into that mystical experience. So it's talking to the mental mind to kind of elicit some kind of a mystical experience. So I'm reminded now of that, because it's like it's addressing what the mind thinks is real, and as you move along into it, it's like something switches or whatever. You're like, oh, everything is one or something like that. I don't know. So anyway, we'll sit for another 5 minutes here of meditation. Yeah. Finding that neutral posture again, pelvic tilt. And taking a few rounded breaths here. One more time, we can work on expanding the chest, maybe placing our hands behind us, clasping the hands, or in this case, I'm clasping the back of the bench, and opening up. Deep breath. And exhaling, releasing. And then tucking the chin down, we're feeling the stretch along the back of the neck. And again, each ear towards the same side shoulder, pressing the other shoulder down and away. Tucking the chin, pressing the other side down and away. Maybe looking up a bit, feeling. Then releasing. We'll stay here for another 5 minutes in meditation. That same posture and awareness with the breath. Sitting in the quietness, the stillness. Being aware of any ambient noise in the environment. bringing some awareness back into the room. Love the practice. Bring your hands together. Namaste.